del digital download. Oops. Sorry, guys, got carried away. Good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're diving into the importance of continuous leadership development. We have a special guest, Jim Kerr, to help us with the discussion. Jim is a renowned leadership coach, consultant, and author. He brings a wealth of experience from working with diverse organizations, including Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. But before we bring Jim on, to help us. Let's go around the set and introduce everyone. And while we are doing this, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and get them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged. So, Adam, would you like to kick us off?
Bonjour, Madame et Monsieur.
Bonjour.
Tracy, Bertrand. Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here again. I'm really looking forward to this. It's interesting. I think we're all into music on the show. As you will see from Jim, he's got a huge selection of music behind him. So we've been talking about that prior to coming on. But on the business side of things, I'm really looking forward to hearing about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Tracy?
Good morning, everybody. Tracy Borson from TLB Coaching and Events, proud partner of DLA Ignite. I will tell you guys, I learned a lot of things from music lyrics. So I'm interested to see how we can incorporate those learnings into our leadership journey, because I bet you there's things we can learn there. And I'm excited to go on the journey.
Certainly looking forward to this. Tim?
Thank you. And welcome, Tracy. My name's Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling: Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Thank you, Tim. And myself, Bertrand Godillot. I am the founder and managing partner of Odysseus & Co., a very proud DLA Ignite partner, and I'm trying to keep us up organized on that call. Mm-hmm. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we speak with Jim Kerr. Drawing from his extensive experience and the insights gained from creating the indispensable leadership community, Jim will provide actionable advice on strategies for leaders at all levels looking to invest into their growth and development. Let's bring him on. Okay. Welcome,
Jim. Welcome, Jim.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you. Looking forward to this.
Jim, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, I started out as a consultant, started my own practice back in, I'm going to have to mumble this, but 1992. I've been doing it for a long time. I do a lot of transformation kinds of work with larger firms, helping them redefine the way work gets done. I also do a lot of leadership coaching, and I've written several books. Number 7 was the one Tim just held up. Thanks for that, Tim. I appreciate the
Sorry
there. So I was thank you very much. But yeah, so I try to get out there and help people improve the way that they lead, how they inspire, engage people, and so on. So really looking forward to having a conversation with you all.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. So let's start with a foundational question. Why is continuous learning crucial for leaders in today's dynamic environment?
Well, leadership's not static. And as a consequence, it's on us as leaders to continue to push the envelope and stay with the times and and be able to meet, new workforce expectations. When COVID hit, suddenly the game changed and people weren't coming to the office every day. And we're still impacted by that. And a lot of leaders under the old paradigm are stuck, frankly, right? So we've got to be able to think differently about these things. And I think leadership development and continuous learning are critical to helping these leaders get unstuck and learn the new way of like I say, engaging and inspiring others.
So, as a leader, Jim, because we need a starting point. So, how can I, in the first place, identify areas where I need to grow, basically, and prioritize these learning opportunities?
Yeah, I think it begins with self-awareness. You've got to be able to kind of look inside yourself and recognize that there's opportunities for improvement. And I think that's where leadership coaching comes in. A lot of times, a coach can help identify some of those blind spots one might have. And it's through that process of self-awareness and maybe having someone who acts as an accountability buddy for you that you can identify things that you want to work on. And then it becomes, a process of just building out a plan that's going to help you get what you need to become better, whether it's a combination of coaching and learning and self-didactic kind of stuff. It's all up to the individual to figure out how to go about getting what they need.
So I have a question about this. As a leader of an organization, if you're an employee within an organization, it's relatively easy to see what you might need in terms of coaching and development. We've got a new product, you need to go on sales training, whatever those things are. And that tends to be very knowledge and skills based stuff. When you're a leader within an organization, oftentimes those people are not at the coalface, but it's more about creating vision. So it's a personal development type thing, maybe, helping you to crystallize your vision and think about what your dream should be and how you might articulate that to people. So I guess that at what point does to Steve Jobs, I can't imagine anybody saying to him when he was alive, you need a bit of help crystallizing your vision. Well, they'd only say it once, obviously.
But Adam, there is a book called The $1 Trillion Coach, which was written not by Steve Jobs, his coach, but by people that accessed his notes after his death. And Steve Jobs did have a coach, and the reason why it's called a $1 Trillion Coach is because that coach was coaching all kinds of people around. What's his name? Smith from Google, Steve Jobs, and he was basically coaching all of those leaders in Silicon Valley.
Wow!
Just throw that out there for you.
No, that's really great because I didn't know that. So how does a leader discover, if you are Steve Jobs, how do you discover that you need coaching? Apple is now the most valuable company in the world. So.
Right.
Can I throw in? I think everybody needs coaching, but is it more like the choice for coaching? Because I think a lot of people who reach that level also have like a personal investment in like continuing to up their game. So they like choose to get insights from other people, which is generally a coach. I don't know. We asked a whole bunch of questions there.
This is what it's all about, Jim.
Right. Yeah. No. I'll try to tie some of this stuff together. The reality is people come to coaching from a variety of different reasons. So sometimes it's a self-awareness, like, gee, I really do need an objective third party to help me out here. So they may seek a coach themselves. I've had situations where the board has said to the leaders, you need coaching. And then suddenly I get plugged in and now I'm coaching 7 people on the leadership team. So that, that's a way that people get it. Oftentimes, what's happening is, and I just had a call yesterday with a group where I think, it could be a really good opportunity for them to get some coaching. They're a startup. They're doing really well. They're recognizing that it's hard to get along with each other, and they need somebody to talk with. And these are the founders of the company. So it all kind of depends on the situation and what brings people to getting the coaching that they need. But keep in mind, and this kind of goes back to, I think, the point Adam was making, that it's lonely at the top. So regardless of the company you're leading, the organization, how many thousands of people that might comprise it, you still have that sense of being alone. And when you're at the tippity top, it's hard to show vulnerability for a lot of people. So a lot of the coaching that I'm doing with the top leaders is about that. It's about being comfortable being vulnerable. And it starts with me. We'll have the conversations. They're demonstrating vulnerability. But I'm encouraging them to show that to their teams because it humanizes them and it enables the team to give meaningful feedback. And once you can get a team that's actually, trusts each other, respects each other, and is willing to say what's on their mind, the better the outcomes. You get the best thinking. I think Jobs is a great example because there's all these horror stories about how he didn't listen to anybody. So he might have been one of those guys that needed someone to kind of open him up to listen to other people. They've got something to say here that might actually be really worthwhile. And also keep in mind, in his history, he was gone from Apple for a while for some of these reasons and brought back in. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of value for anyone to have an objective third party who doesn't care about anything politically inside the organization, just wants to make you a more effective leader. I think that's really an important thing to consider when you're thinking about, getting coaching.
I think that apolitical standpoint is a really important one, isn't it? Because they're not, an external coach is not subject to the dynamics of the organization in quite the same way as you as an employee or a leader are.
Right. Yeah, because, it's really hard for somebody inside an organization to seek somebody out inside that organization for coaching. And I see a lot of companies make that mistake. They have, a leadership development group, and they have coaches on staff, and they believe that they can coach up their, leaders that way. But the problem is those coaches are on staff. Those coaches have a political stake in the way things get done. They have an agenda, but an objective third party, someone from outside, doesn't. I don't have a horse in the race. I'm just trying to help the person I'm working with to become more effective. And I don't really care who wins the argument in the arm wrestling contest inside the org. You know what I mean? I'm just helping the person I'm working with think about it from different points of view so that they can become more effective in those conversations.
You said, Jim, that leaders are on their own, and I agree with that, of course. But then the question is there a play where actually putting together different leaders as a community can kind of help them open up, because they are, in other words, sharing with their peers, with their peers. Is this a way of getting the conversation started, let's say?
I think so. Yeah, I love the question and the observation. The reality is, I think it behooves us as leaders to create a community of leaders around us. So a lot of what I do through my coaching work is I'm basically bringing a coaching program in-house, and I'll have 10 or 12 people in the program that the leadership team is identified as folks that are either high potentials who need to be built up to be on the succession plan, or even themselves as a leadership team. So yeah, I think there's definitely strength in numbers, and building a community around a leadership team is really critical because they're making the decisions day to day about what's going on in that organization. So the more we can build trust and understanding and respect, the stronger that team's going to be.
We have a reaction from the audience, and Chris has just underlined what you were saying about having an internal coach is probably not the best way forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think anytime you have an external third party, it gives you the opportunity for just like that reset, right? I worked in-house for a long time. I've been a consultant now for a while, and it's just like you get into the day-to-day of getting stuff done. And sometimes we don't realize that stuff is not connected to our objectives anymore, but it just becomes habit. And having someone come in from a third-party perspective always creates that opportunity to reset against the objectives and say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is what our team is trying to accomplish. How can we do that together? And Jim, that led to a question that I had about, I think sometimes in this like digital landscape that we live in, it can sound like there's like one journey that is the journey that all teams should go on, or that all leaders should go on. And you mentioned self-awareness earlier in the episode. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about how to create kind of that like customized journey for yourself as a leader, but also in how you create that ecosystem of leaders building their own journey together.
Sure. Now, again, great question there, Tracy. I think, the coaching work that I do, the very first step is self-assessment. So now we've got a baseline for where this person's starting from. And it's really important to establish that baseline to create a bespoke leadership coaching plan for that person, so that everyone is on their own journey, and we're all stars of our own hero myth, right? So it's important for a coach to recognize the starting point and then discuss what are the things you're ready to do to make changes, because I, as a coach, I can't change you. Only you can change you. I can help you. I can identify some things to work on. I can point you in directions that may make sense and expand your thinking about a particular challenge that you want to overcome. But at the end of the day, you've got to do the work. And if you're not willing to do it, then let's choose another thing to work on.
Right.
So yeah, it starts with the self-assessment, helps to raise self-awareness. Some organizations also ask me to do the 360 for each person, which gives additional perspective. And what's really powerful about a 360, where you've got input from different players around the individual that I'm working with, is I get to see what their leadership team thinks of them, what their subordinates think of them, what their colleagues at the same level think. And what's remarkable there is incredible blind spots get exposed through this process, because now I've got a self-assessment that says I need these things, and then I'm listening to the input from their colleagues, and wow, what you think you're doing and what they think you're doing are two different things. And that's where we can actually start to really pinpoint, maybe we need to work on something here, because you think you're coming across this way, but your subordinates think that way. And I had a classic example. I was working with a woman high up in the organization, C-level staff member, and she basically kissed up and kicked down. So the CEO loved her because she kissed up to him. But when I started to talk with the people that work for her, they couldn't stand her. She was a micromanager. She was dismissive, disrespectful, always pointing the finger and all that kind of stuff. So we got into it a little bit and started to, I started to talk with her about, why do you think you strike out at the people you actually should be counting on? And she said, well, I get frustrated. I'm impatient. And she had longer hair. So I said, do you have those elastics that you put in your hair? Yeah, of course. I go, you have one, you kind of keep it around your wrist. She said, yeah. I said, you know what? Let's practice this. Every time you get frustrated because someone, from your team knocks on the door and is looking for something from you, and you start to feel yourself getting infuriated, snap it. And that's a reminder that leadership's about them. It's not about you. So when someone knocks on the door, they need something from you. You're there to help them as a leader, right? So she did. She started to practice it. And literally within a few weeks and again, we meet every week. The kind of coaching I do is a weekly commitment. But through that reinforcement and through her practice of snapping the elastic, she was able to remind herself that it's not about getting frustrated and angry because this person doesn't know what they're doing. It's about her providing that individual what they need to be effective.
So do you ever find in that situation, so you've got this senior level person, she's sucking up to her boss, and she's a monster to all the people beneath her. And I'm kind of extrapolating what you said, because you didn't actually say that.
In more dramatic words.
And you conduct some interviews, and the boss thinks, oh, this person's absolutely fantastic, and the people underneath think this person is the worst person I've ever worked for.
Mm-hmm.
And when you deliver that feedback, do you ever get an instance where, when you deliver that to someone, they're almost in tears as a result of this?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, there's an emotional reaction because, like I said earlier, and I was half joking, but it really is true. We're all sort of the stars of our own show, and we think we're great, and then someone comes in who is there to help us, and the first thing they say, one of the first things they say is, yeah, maybe you're not so great. There's some things here that we can work on. It can be a shock to the system. And a lot of people resist it initially, frankly. They don't want to hear that. And
I was going to say, I feel like the bigger challenge is denial in a lot of
ways. Yeah, I mean, it goes through all the stages of, recovery, I guess. But it's first got to admit you have a problem, and now once we can get you to say, yeah, there is something there, then we can say, well, do you want to fix it? And then if you want to fix it, then you've got some help here to get you through.
Do you not find, though, that most people know what the problem is? No, we don't coach people on development. We coach people on action that they need to take to deliver certain outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And very rarely have we ever coached anybody when they haven't known what they've needed to do, and they haven't known that they're not pulling their weight at doing that thing. And I'm sure that this person that was not very nice to the people that were reporting to her, she knew that she was not being nice, because she wouldn't have behaved that way with her spouse or her boss. So
we don't know that.
Yeah, very true.
We didn't pull the spouse.
But
right.
But are people often in a case of denial there? So they do know what the problem is, but they're afraid of confronting that.
I think so, Adam. I think, sure, deep down inside you might know, but you also have excuses. And that's how you live with yourself. So you basically make up some reasons why you operate the way you operate to justify it, right? Unless you're, really have mental illness or something. But I mean, most of us really want to, feel like we're good people and doing good things and being nice to others and all that stuff, right? So yeah, I suppose deep down inside, but if you've spent decades telling yourself a story, and now all of a sudden you're in a leadership coaching situation and you're getting feedback from the coach that indicates that maybe some of those stories you're telling yourself aren't really true, it's yeah, it can kind of rattle you. And you asked about, is there an emotional reaction? Yeah, a lot of times there is.
Mm.
I did a 360 when I was in corporate, and there was stuff on that feedback on that. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So there was things that on there that you kind of you did know, and so, I knew that, but there was feedback from people that I'd gone to, because you're always told to go outside of the network of the people that you generally work with to get a far broader level of feedback.
Perspective, yeah.
And I remember getting stuff that.
Well, and I think just before we go to the question, there's like this concept called Johari's blind window, which is that like there's things you know about yourself that you can see. There's things about you that other people can see, but you can't see. There's things about other people that you can see that they can't see. And then there's just like a whole bunch of unknown things that is subconscious and unconscious and all of these things. And I think, like we talked earlier about community, like what does that look like in terms of whether we go all the way to being vulnerable, or we just talk about like, I am in a space of psychological safety where I can accept that there's things I don't know about myself, and there's a benefit to me in having those things revealed to me, because then I can do something with that. But up until that point, I actually don't see it that way, because I can't see things through your eyes. I can only see things through my eyes. I only have my filters. I only have my experiences. And so unless you get those kind of 360 reviews or other wider feedback mechanisms of people saying like, hey, this is my experience of you, and I'd really love for us to like work together better. But we have to be able to see those things and accept those things in order for us to move forward, go on the journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the Johari window thing is an excellent way to sort of document those varied perspectives. And what it really does is it helps to identify blind spots. So it's things that everyone else can see but you. And those tend to be the things that, in fact, I wrote an article about that for a UK magazine probably 10 years ago about the Johari window. Management-issues.com if you ever want to check it out. But yeah, the reality is that's the fodder for coaching and development, is those blind spots. And the cool thing is you get to choose which ones you want to work on, because like I said before, the coach really can't change you, only you can change you.
We've got a question from the audience and from Sebastian. Thanks for raising the question. I'll try to hopefully I get that correctly. So why do we tend to focus on outcomes rather than the thought process or the specific behaviors that drive these outcomes? Basically, I suspect is the question. Any
thoughts
ideas,
on that?
feedback on that?
Yeah, I think it's both. I do believe that you want to focus on outcomes, because at the end of the day, especially in a business setting, that's what we're ultimately judged by. But you also have to look at, how did I get there? How did I get to the behavior? And that's where you start to look at different, models and ways of behaving that are impacting you, both positively and negatively. Because there's things that we do that are defense mechanisms that one could argue, that's really bad. That's bad behavior. But it's not really bad behavior if it's protecting you and keeping you, sane, right? So there's a balance between just judging behavior, without recognizing some of the impact, and in the form of the question here, some of the outcomes that behavior actually delivers. So you have to look at both things. You have to look at, what are we getting? What are we trying to achieve? And how am I behaving in ways to help me achieve that? And organizationally, how we achieve it,
And I guess probably the next, if we keep on that path, is basically the question of culture.
Yeah.
So it's basically, how do you drive into an organization a culture of, you could say, continuous improvement, but when it comes to the way you drive the organization, the way you drive your management team, and ultimately, I suspect your individual contributors as well. So how does that? How do you actually, create that culture?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Bertrand, I love the question. And let's start with some definitions. So culture, in my mind, and I do a lot of work in culture transformation. So it's a question I get asked all the time. Like, what's this like thing called culture? What do we? All it is at the end of the day is the way people behave. So it's a group of
Mhm.
people. If we want to talk about, ancient Inca culture, it's how the Incas behaved. You, it's the stuff
Mhm.
they did, the tools they used, what they ate,
Yeah.
how they interacted with each other, and so on. So when we look at a corporation and we talk about the culture, we're talking about the way the people inside that company behave. And oh, by the way, there's microcultures because maybe the finance department behaves a little differently than the marketing department,
I think
right?
that's a fair bet.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
clear. That's
exactly.
clear.
So, yeah, so
I've never been in an organization where the marketing department and the finance department culture is the same.
yeah. I mean, so it's, again, as someone that's coming in as a third party to try to help and affect change, I've got to recognize the fact that there is that dynamic. There's microcultures inside the broader culture, and we've got to baseline it. Where are we starting from? We've got to create a vision. Back to a point that Adam raised earlier in the conversation, and we have to sort of do a gap analysis. What's the difference between where we are today, our baseline, and where we want to be, our vision? And how do we define the work that's necessary to move us from where we are to where we want to go? And that's the culture transformation. It's all those projects and programs that you identify to help you move from your starting point to your target. That's absolutely critical, and you've got to fund and support and execute those initiatives. So that's how we drive change. How does a top leader, to get to your question, Bertrand, how does a top leader affect culture? It's how they behave. And guess what? You can say anything you want to say, but at the end of the day, your people are watching your feet, meaning they're
Mm.
watching how you behave. It doesn't matter what you're saying. What matters is how you're behaving. And if you indicate that it's okay to be laissez-faire with your commitments, then guess what? You have a culture that lies. Okay.
It's really
Yeah.
interesting you say that, and that's blindingly obvious. However, and there's always a however, we so rarely see leaders walking the walk. What we invariably see is leaders that have a vision that requires all of you guys to do really hard work, but I'm the leader and therefore I'm not going to do the hard work.
Mm.
So how is that possible? Because these are not exactly well kept secrets, are they?
Yeah, I think I would qualify some of what you're saying. I don't think it's always. I think it's
No.
sometimes,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
the organizations that have dysfunction have what you just described. The leadership team operates differently than the expectations they're setting for their people. That's dysfunction. Okay. Um, you could look at a family unit and say, you guys do, the parents are yelling at the kids, you guys do this. And meanwhile, they're acting the
Stop shouting.
right. That beautiful
Stop smoking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. So that's where we've got this dissonance, in those organizations where the top team operates differently than the expectations they're setting for their people, we have problems. And as a consultant to those organizations, I'm trying to identify that, help the leadership team recognize it, and then devise some strategies and some initiatives that can be done to make that happen. In a lot of instances, it won't happen because leadership team's not ready to change.
Well, I mean, Tim and I worked at an organization where expenses were cost sensitive within the organization up to a certain level. And then above that level, $500 on a bottle of wine is no problem because we're going out and we're important people. But had any of us spent $500 on a bottle of wine, we would have been on a disciplinary for that.
Yep.
And sometimes I imagine that the reason the leadership behave in a disingenuous way to how they tell other people to behave in the organization is because actually it's one of the perks of being a leader, isn't it? Do what I say, not what I do, kind of thing. So how do you manage that? Because that's quite a big thing to address with, one would assume, powerful, senior, well remunerated people.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the role and what I'm being asked to accomplish. But if I was sitting on a leadership committee, and oftentimes I become a de facto member of these leadership teams for the organizations that I work with. So I'm attending strategic planning meetings every week and doing all that kind of stuff. What I often ask them is, are you ready to change? Do you want to do what's necessary to help your organization thrive? And be honest with them, and by the time I get to that question, I've already got a lot of information in my back pocket. So depending on the reaction I get, I can draw from, well, yeah, but except in the engineering department, here's what's going on. And, you're not actually behaving that way. Because look at this problem over here. So it's having that honest, frank discussion that I think is the beginning of change. And then it's up to them. Like I said, I've been saying throughout our conversation today, we can't change anybody but ourselves. So I can present the information, I can suggest what we need to do, but if you're a top leader, you have to decide, is a $500 bottle of wine, necessary here?
I mean, that
on an expensive report, like, why not?
Yeah. I mean that was a flippant example, but yeah. Tim and I, when we work with organizations, we get incredibly invested in the success of the organization. We desperately want them to do well out of the stuff we teach them to do. In some cases, I feel that we're more desperate than they are for them to do well. And we make no bones about the fact that this is a journey, and some of the stuff we're going to ask you to do is going to be quite challenging. And as you said, Jim, are you up for the challenge? Yeah, we are. Absolutely. We're absolutely on this. We're 100%. And they're not. They're absolutely not. They love the idea, but right up until the point that it actually requires them to either work and do some stuff or step out of their comfort zone.
Right.
That's when the full enormity of change, not just our change, I guess any change,
sure,
lands with somebody. So how does one manage that when one is coaching and working with clients?
Well, I feel like it's about being the accountability buddy as coach. So if you've agreed, if we've got the conversation has happened and you say yes, and now I'm working with you, and now I'm going to talk to you every week about, are you actually doing these things you said you're going to do?
But I've had a really difficult week this week. I've had loads of
quarter end, Jim.
Yeah, but next week I'm definitely doing it next week.
So that happens to me about 1 or 2 coaching sessions, then I suggest we shouldn't be working together. I basically fire clients that aren't committed to making change, because it's a waste of their time and resources and mine. I really want to have an impact. I want to help people, and it's so cool when you see growth. I was working with a group of people who were identified as high potentials. They were director level people. The typical profile was 20 years of experience in the company. Most of them had advanced degrees. We're preparing them for jobs at the vice president level. They were directors. And, of a group of 12, 3 of them are now vice presidents. And that was within a year of working together. I get great satisfaction from being able to share that story because it shows growth happened, that these folks came at their baseline, wherever they were, and then they worked at it and committed and made changes and got opportunities that they probably wouldn't have had they not made that commitment to themselves. So I feel like that's got to be part of the contract, you know. And again, I hate to say it, but I walk away from clients that don't care. If you don't care, then why should I?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think more people should do that, honestly. I think it would like force people to actually make that decision to care. Because I'm not saying you're bad or wrong because you decide not to choose this right now, but like I'm here to help people who choose this right now.
Absolutely right. That's the right attitude. I mean, there's no judgment. You know, you're just not ready, or you know, you're not ready to do the work. So if you're not ready to do the work, that's cool. Maybe sometime in the future. You know?
Well, and I think I mean, to kind of speak to what you were saying, Adam, about like the leader just sits at the top and do no work. And I like personally, I don't like to pretend that being a visionary isn't work because other people are not coming up with that stuff. And I think that that's an important role for like high level leaders to play. And at the same time, what are the other things that are your responsibility to do? Yeah, maybe it's not coding and I need people to code stuff, but like, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn about myself? What do I need to learn about people? What do I need to learn about team building? What do I need to learn about my own self-awareness and how I micromanage people? Like, I don't want people to think that that's not work because that's a substantial amount of work and investment that people will put into themselves that a lot of people aren't putting into themselves. So I think that's an important thing to remember as part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of play off of the point, I think, you know, if you were to draw a pyramid and you said, okay, the guys at the top of the pyramid are the top leadership team. There's a layer in the middle that's the middle management, and then there's a layer that's much bigger that are supervisory level. Well, if you think about what they're worrying about, the people at the top are worrying about where are we 5 years from now. So they have to envision. That's the job, right? But folks in the middle need to be able to translate that into something that has to get done this year. Right. So if I'm a middle manager, I'm worried about this year's budget, this year's set of projects, right? And if I'm a supervisor, I'm not worrying about 5 years from now. I'm not even worrying about this year. I'm worried about today. Like, how do I get work off my desk right this moment, right? So you have to understand that if you're going to drive change. If you're a change agent from the outside, like the roles that we're talking about playing, then you got to recognize that you're dealing with at least 3 different perspectives about what good looks like, you know? And then you've got to help those folks at each of those layers by giving them what they need to be more effective. So that perspective is critical. If we don't have it, then we're not doing a really good job of delivering advisory services to those organizations because they're different perspectives. And, oh, by the way, they're different time frames.
Well, actually, okay, so this is the question that I had, and I think it's an important part because this show is called The Leadership Journey. And most people wouldn't assume that a journey is like 5 minutes. So I'm going to like have one conversation with a coach and then know all the things I'm going to need to know. And then I'm good. Like there is a destination. And while most people would assume when we say journey that there's a destination, I feel personally that in leadership, there's not really a destination. Like this is a continual investment to continuing to go on a journey. Because if we're responsible for what's 5 years from now, and then COVID hits, and now what we thought was going to be 5 years from now is definitely not what's 5 years from now. Like I am in like an evolutionary role, and therefore I need to be evolutionary. And so, whereas even when you look at, we're trying to use the phrase earlier, continuous improvement, like at the lower levels of an organization, there might be like very tactical things that I can implement from a continuous improvement perspective that can be done in 30 days. Right? But a leadership journey, And again, like I would love to hear your perspective on it, Jim. But in my head, a leadership journey is an investment in your career for the like lifetime of your career, and it's ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the journey concept I think is effective because it suggests there'll be bumps in the road. So whether it's COVID comes out of left field and all of a sudden we all have to deal with it, the game changes, we have to pivot. Frankly, my coaching work really, you know, went on steroids during that period because there was this whole group of people that, like everyone else on the planet, was like, what is this? Like, is this the end of the world as we know it? And helping folks kind of get through that was a good bit of work, and it was trying to help them see that there are alternatives to the way they've been doing. The paradigm shifted. And what's interesting about paradigms, right, is we really will defend them because we were successful within those paradigms. So if you're successful in your chain of command by doing whatever it is you do, and someone from the outside comes in and says, you're wrong, you got to change, you're going to defend it. You're going to come up with reasons and excuses. And like I say, all the lies we tell ourselves to sleep at night, all that's going to come out. And, to be effective, you got to help people see that for what it is. They need to recognize that behavior in themselves, and then they have to choose to change it. And then that's where coaching comes in, right? Because now we can help. As soon as you say you want to make a change, okay, you got somebody that'll do their best to help you.
Should you change?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that you're doing that's excellent and should continue, and if anything, just get better at it. And then there's other things that you're doing that maybe could be done in a different way, and you'd be more effective. And at the end of it all, to tell you the truth, really, truly, the at the end of a coaching program where I've coached, a person and we've met 25 times over the course of 6 months, right? I'm kind of asking them a question as part of the so long at the end. Are you happier?
Like that. I like
Yeah,
that.
because they have to be. If they aren't, then either I didn't do a good job or they didn't do a good job.
Jim, can I butt in and change the conversation?
Sure.
I've seen a lot about this on LinkedIn. I wanted to get your perspective of it. Celebrating success. What's your view on it?
I think you should celebrate success by acknowledging it. Like, look at the effort we put in and look at the payoff. Because if you commemorate it in some fashion, it's like, Pavlov's dog. You're basically providing a reward. It's beyond just spoils of the business being successful, but it's the idea that we're commemorating that we've all come together. We all had the same target. We all worked to get it, and let's recognize that. But there's the however that Adam liked to use earlier. However, you've got to get off of that and onto the next thing. So it's, let's take a moment, celebrate our success, and now here's what we're going to do next.
And is it? And I don't know whether it's a generational thing or what. Is it that in effect that we should be having micro celebrating of successes, or should we be doing it annually, or what constitutes us having a celebration?
Yeah, I think it can be just a small gesture that sort of let's take a moment and look at what we did. The thing is, I feel like we all are motivated by success. So we've got to take a moment to be able to recognize, like, yeah, we've been successful here. We achieved some goal, and note it, and then identify where we're going from here, that kind of thing. Because organizations are living organisms. Why? Because they're comprised of people who are living, right? Living and breathing. So we've got to continue to evolve and take the moments to celebrate, sort of, take a moment to smell the roses, and then let's move on. Let's keep going. Where's the next rose bush? That kind of thing. Rob Longley, I see in the messages there, says that celebrations need to feel natural, not filling a square, and I couldn't agree more. It's got to be just kind of part of the culture, where you're actually able to make those pauses to celebrate, to recognize progress. That's just part of what we do. That's how we operate. That's how we behave in this culture.
Jim, there are a few comments and questions in the chat that I'd like to echo and kind of regroup. We've all had a personal assistant dealing with our diaries and our different meetings, etc. Do you think that there is any chance, I have to raise that question, that any form of intelligence,
artificial intelligence in particular,
especially, could at any point
I would take
in time,
any intelligence, to tell you this.
Could at any point in time, act as a coach?
I don't think so. I do think that you can go to these chats, and some coaches are actually selling this now. You can subscribe, and
I'm
there's
sure.
an AI chat bot. And
We've had one on here, Jim.
Okay, all right.
in the comments.
Yeah, and I think that it can do it can answer a question for sure. If the language model's rich enough, it might even be able to put out some pretty good ideas. But past that, there's this whole thing about how does a chatbot keep me accountable? How does a chatbot suggest things that didn't work? And how does a chatbot create a mirror so I can see myself in a different light? It can't do those things. So I can ask a chatbot a question, give me 3 ways to engage my team, and it'll spit out 3 ideas. And I can say, I really like idea number 2. Give me 3 ideas about how to do idea number 2, and it can give me that. But when I actually start to practice whatever those sentences are that the AI thing spit out, I need somebody who actually can see it and recognize the behavior and see how people reacted to that new thing that I was doing and give me feedback. And a chat bot can't do that.
And I think that a coach is going to challenge. You talked earlier on about
absolutely.
If I decide, well, I'm not going to do that. And you can turn around and say, yeah, but what about what's going on in engineering? And because you've got those things in the back pocket, you know how to challenge.
Right. But I think it could be not to say, oh, AI is bad. It's not. I think it's great, and it can complement what we're doing. So I see it as a tool, but it's not a replacement.
Thank you, Jim. Really, thanks. It's been really great. Where can we learn more? How can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of different places to look. One's, and I've created a whole cottage industry around the word indispensable. So if it's indispensable, it's indispensable. Thank you, Tim. But that's the book.
Tim holds up Jim's book.
Right. That's the most recent book. It just came out in August. It's got 101 leadership tips. Check it out. But you can also find the coaching side is indispensable-coaching.com. And the consulting side is indispensable fill in the blank, guys, consulting.com. So look at both of those for ideas about how I might be able to help you.
Thank you, Jim. We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get the show highlights, behind the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at thedigitaldownload.live/newsletter. on behalf of the panelists, to our guest, Jim, thank you all and see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you, guys.
Jim.
Thank you.
Bye.